You want to know the truth, huh? The real truth. Not the sugar-coated nonsense they feed you. Not the fairy tales wrapped in pretty little lies. Nah, I'm talking about the raw, unfiltered, blood-stained truth. The kind that burns when it touches your soul. The kind that makes your stomach turn. The kind that either breaks you or makes you invincible. See, people, they love to pretend. They love to act strong, untouchable, wise. But you ignore them, just ignore them, and watch what happens. Watch how their voices crack, how their smiles twitch, how their pride starts bleeding through the cracks. Oh, they can act all they want, but silence? Your silence is a mirror, and weak people, they can't stand what they see in it. That's the first rule of the game, kid. You don't react. You don't give them the satisfaction. Let them run their mouths. Let them throw their stones. Just stand there. Watch. Ignore. Because the more you ignore, the more they reveal their weaknesses. They start slipping, their words become desperate, their insults turn shaky. They need a reaction. They crave validation. And when you don't give it to them, well, that's when the mask falls off. You ever notice how the loudest people, the ones who act like they're above it all, are the most insecure? It's hilarious. They talk, talk, talk. But the moment you stop playing along, the moment you stop acknowledging their little games, they unravel. Because weak people don't survive in silence. They drown in it. See, people think power is in words, in fists, in threats. But real power? It's in knowing. It's in standing still while the world around you panics. It's in silence. You ignore them, and suddenly they start exposing themselves. They start showing their true colors, the desperate, pathetic need for attention, the fear of being invisible. And once you see that, once you see them for what they really are, you own them. Oh, but it's not just enemies. No, no, no. Friends, family, lovers, they're all the same. Everyone shows their true face when you stop giving them what they want. The ones who really care, they'll stay. The ones who don't, they'll start breaking, piece by piece, until there's nothing left but the truth they tried so hard to hide. You ever seen someone crumble just because you stopped caring? It's beautiful. It's poetic. You were their fuel, their lifeline, and the moment you took it away, they fell apart. And you didn't have to lift a damn finger. That's what you need to understand, kid. People are weak, and the more you ignore them, the more they show you just how weak they are. You don't have to fight. You don't have to prove anything. Just watch. Watch how their confidence turns to doubt. Watch how their pride becomes fear. Watch how every insult, every act of cruelty, every betrayal they threw at you comes back to haunt them. Because here's the thing about people who hurt you. They expect you to scream. They expect you to break. They want you to react. It makes them feel powerful. But when you don't, When you just sit back and smile, that's when they start falling apart. That's when they start seeing the monster they tried to create in you, in themselves. And oh, they will regret it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday, when they're all alone, when the silence is deafening, when the guilt creeps in like a slow, relentless poison, they'll remember you. They'll remember every time they pushed you, every time they laughed, every time they thought they were winning. And it'll eat them alive. See, people think karma is some mystical force, some kind of cosmic justice, but it's not. Karma is just the weight of their own actions catching up to them. And trust me, it always catches up. So don't waste your breath. Don't waste your time. Just sit back, watch, and enjoy the show. Because the more you ignore them, the more they reveal their weaknesses. And that is where your power lies. See, people think they've got you figured out. They think they know who you are, what you want, how you'll react. They study you like rats in a lab, waiting for the right moment to poke, to prod, to push. And the second you react, the second you give them a glimpse of your emotions, they win. It's that simple. The game isn't about strength. It's not about intelligence. It's about control. And most people, they hand over control without even realizing it. Someone insults them. They fire back. Someone disrespects them. They lose their cool. Someone ignores them. They beg for attention, like puppets on strings, dancing to a tune they didn't even write. But you're going to be different. You're going to break the rules. You're going to stop playing their game. And that starts with silence. That starts with detachment. That starts with looking them dead in the eye and saying, "You don't matter enough to deserve my energy." Because the truth is, the people who try to tear you down, they're already beneath you. They wouldn't be trying so hard if they weren't. Think about it. When was the last time a truly powerful person wasted their breath on someone insignificant? When was the last time someone who had their life together spent their time throwing dirt on someone else? They don't. Because real power doesn't need to prove itself. Only the weak do. That's why the more you ignore them, the more they unravel. They need a reaction to validate their existence. They need you to acknowledge their words, their insults, their presence. Because without it, they're nothing, just empty shells rattling around in their own misery. And when you refuse to play along, when you refuse to dance to their tune, they start to panic. They start to expose their own insecurities, their own fears, their own weaknesses. They thought they were the ones in control. They thought they could manipulate you, bait you, break you, but instead, they're the ones falling apart. And that's the secret, kid. That's the trick. You don't fight them. You don't argue. You don't waste a single ounce of your strength on them. You just sit back and watch. Watch how their confidence turns into desperation. Watch how their pride starts to crumble. Watch how every insult, every attack, every little game they played turns against them. It's like watching a house of cards collapse in slow motion. And the best part? You didn't even have to lift a finger. But don't get me wrong, this isn't about being passive. This isn't about letting people walk all over you. No, no, no. This is about knowing when to strike and when to stay silent. It's about choosing your battles wisely. You ever see a lion waste its energy chasing flies? No, because a lion knows what it is. A lion doesn't need to prove itself, and neither do you. That's what they don't understand. That's what they fear. Because weak people, they live for conflict. They need it. It's the only thing that makes them feel alive. But you don't need anyone's approval. You don't need to prove your worth. And that terrifies them. Because the moment they realize they have no control over you, the moment they see that their words mean nothing, that's when they start to break. That's when they start to question everything. And oh, it hurts them more than you'll ever know. The silence, the indifference, the refusal to engage, it eats away at them. Because people like that, they thrive on attention. They thrive on drama. Take that away, and what's left? Just a scared, insecure little child throwing a tantrum, hoping someone, anyone, will care enough to respond. But you won't, because you're smarter than that. You're stronger than that. And that's where you win. Not with words, not with fists, but with cold, calculated silence. Let them talk. Let them scream. Let them throw their pathetic little punches. Because at the end of the day, you're untouchable. And the more you ignore, the more they reveal their weaknesses. Every single time. And here's the part they don't tell you, the part they hope you never figure out. When you master the art of silence, when you perfect the discipline of indifference, you stop being their victim. You stop being their plaything, their puppet, their target, because the truth is, most people aren't looking for a fight. They're looking for a reaction. They want to know they got under your skin. They want to see you flinch, hear you scream, watch you feel. Because that's the only thing that validates their existence. That's the only thing that makes them feel like they matter. But when you don't give it to them, when you sit there, unbothered, unreadable, a blank, emotionless void, oh, it drives them insane. It eats away at them like rust on metal, slow and relentless, corroding every bit of confidence they thought they had. They start to doubt themselves. They start to question their own strength, their own worth. Why isn't he reacting? Why doesn't he care? Why isn't he breaking like he's supposed to? And that's when the fear sets in. That's when the panic takes over. Because suddenly, they feel weak. They feel exposed. They feel powerless. See, people talk a big game, but most of them are cowards. Weaklings hiding behind loud voices and cheap theatrics, hoping no one notices how empty they really are. And the moment they meet someone who doesn't play by their rules, someone who doesn't fold, doesn't beg, doesn't flinch, they fall apart. Because now they're standing in front of a mirror, forced to face the truth they've been running from all along. They are nothing without your reaction. They have no real power, no real strength, no real control. They were never the ones in charge. You were. And that's the game, kid. That's how you win. Not by throwing punches, not by screaming louder, but by standing still while they destroy themselves. You ever watch someone self-destruct in real time? It's fascinating. The longer you stay silent, the more they scramble, the more they reveal, the more they unravel. And all you have to do is nothing. Just watch. Just wait. Because the more you ignore, the more they reveal their weaknesses. It's a law of nature as predictable as gravity. You take away their fuel, and they burn themselves out. But here's where it gets even better. See, people don't just expose their weaknesses when you ignore them. They expose their true selves. Because when someone's desperate, when they're losing control, that's when the mask slips. That's when the real face comes out. And trust me, kid, most people, you don't want to see what's underneath. It's ugly. It's pathetic. It's terrifying. The fake smiles, the friendly handshakes, the sweet words. It's all a performance. But take away the audience, take away the validation, take away the attention, and what's left? Just another lost soul clawing at the walls of their own emptiness. And that's when the tables turn. That's when they start chasing you. Because now you're the mystery. Now you're the puzzle they can't solve. And people hate what they can't understand. They hate what they can't control. So they'll come crawling back, trying to get a rise out of you, trying to make you feel something. They'll test you. They'll tempt you. They'll do everything in their power to drag you back into their little game. But you won't budge. You'll stay silent, cold, detached. And the more they try, the weaker they look. And then comes the best part. Regret. Oh, it always comes. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But one day, when they're all alone, when there's no one left to impress, no one left to manipulate, no one left to hurt, they'll remember you. They'll remember every time they pushed you, every time they tried to break you, every time they thought they had you figured out. And it'll hit them. They lost. Not because you fought back, not because you got revenge, but because you didn't need to. Because while they were busy trying to tear you down, you were rising, untouched, unaffected, untouchable. That's what real strength looks like. Not screaming, not fighting, just being. Existing in a state of complete and utter indifference while the weak crumble under their own weight. And the best part? You never have to lift a finger, because the more you ignore, the more they reveal their weaknesses. Every time, without fail. And once you understand that, once you master it, Once you truly live it, you'll never lose again. And the beauty of it, the irony, they'll never even realize what happened to them. They'll sit there, broken, exhausted, wondering where it all went wrong, never once considering that they did it to themselves, that their own arrogance, their own need for control, their own fragile ego was the weapon that destroyed them. See, that's the thing about weak people. They don't think they're weak. They tell themselves they're the strong ones, the ones in charge, the ones who dictate the rules. But real strength doesn't need validation. Real strength doesn't beg for attention. Real strength doesn't seek out conflict just to feel important. Only the insecure do that. Only the ones who fear their own insignificance cling to the illusion of dominance. And once you see that, once you truly understand it, you'll start to see the world differently. You'll start to notice how desperate people are, how afraid they are of being ignored, how much they need to be acknowledged just to feel like they exist. And that's when you realize you own them, not with force, not with power, but with the simplest, most effortless thing in the world: silence. Just let them talk. Let them scream. Let them throw their little tantrums, because in the end, it's all just noise. Empty, meaningless noise. And the moment you stop listening, the moment you stop caring, that's the moment they cease to exist. Because that's the real fear, isn't it? Being forgotten, being irrelevant, being nothing. That's what keeps them up at night. That's why they fight so hard to stay in your mind. Why they push and poke and prod, hoping, praying that you'll give them just one more reaction, one more shred of attention to keep them afloat. Because without it, they're drowning, sinking into the abyss of their own insignificance. And nothing terrifies them more than realizing that you don't even think about them anymore, that they spent all that time, all that energy, all that effort trying to break you, and in the end, they were the only ones who shattered. And that's the funny part, isn't it? They thought they were winning. They thought they had power. But the moment you stopped playing their game, the moment you refused to engage, they lost everything. Because control, it was never in their hands. It was always in yours. They just didn't see it. And by the time they do, it's too late. You've moved on. You've outgrown them. And they're stuck there, trapped in their own misery, screaming at ghosts who don't even hear them anymore. Because that's what you become when you master this. A ghost. Untouchable. Unshakable. A force of nature that no insult, no betrayal, no cheap little game can reach. You don't fight battles anymore. You don't waste your breath on people who aren't worth it. You just exist above them, beyond them, watching as they destroy themselves, powerless to stop it, powerless to pull themselves back from the edge they threw themselves over. And that's the ultimate revenge, isn't it? Not getting even, not striking back, just watching as time does the work for you, watching as their own choices drag them down, deeper and deeper, while you rise higher and higher, untouched, untouchable. And by the time they realize what they lost, what they did, what they threw away, you'll be too far ahead for them to ever reach you again. That's the secret. That's the lesson. That's the truth. The more you ignore, the more they reveal their weaknesses, every time, without fail. And once you understand that, once you master it, you'll never need to fight another battle again. Because the people who want to hurt you, the ones who try to drag you down, the ones who think they have power over you, they'll destroy themselves long before they ever come close to touching you. And all you have to do is nothing. And that's the real joke, isn't it? The punchline they never see coming. That in their desperate attempt to break you, they end up breaking themselves. That in their need to control you, they lose control of everything. Because weak people don't see the long game. They don't understand patience. They don't realize that real power isn't about making noise. It's about knowing when to stay silent. It's about watching them dig their own graves while they laugh, thinking they're the ones in charge. It's about standing there, unmoved, untouched, while they waste every ounce of energy trying to get to you. And when they finally collapse, exhausted, defeated, screaming for your attention one last time, you walk away without a word, without a glance, because by then they're already ghosts. And that's what drives them insane. Not the loss, not the failure, but the fact that you never cared enough to notice that while they were planning, scheming, obsessing over how to break you, you weren't even thinking about them. That's what destroys them. The realization that they were never your enemy. They were never even competition. They were just noise, background static. And now they're nothing. See, people like to believe they have control over others. They like to think their words, their actions, their presence matters. But the moment you take that away, the moment you strip them of the illusion, they fall apart. Because without it, they're empty. That's why they need conflict. That's why they need attention. Because if they're not hurting someone, if they're not playing their little games, then they have to sit with themselves. And that's the one thing they can't do. Because deep down, they know the truth. They know what they are: weak, pathetic, a hollow shell pretending to be whole. And when you refuse to give them a reaction, when you refuse to feed into their madness, you force them to face it. And it's ugly. Oh, it's ugly. You ever watch someone spiral when they realize they have no power? It's not anger. It's not rage. It's fear. Pure, raw fear. Because suddenly, they're looking at themselves without the mask. No excuses, no distractions, just them and the weight of their own insignificance. And that's when it hits them. They were never strong to begin with. They were never in control. They were never anything more than a desperate, scared little thing, clawing at shadows, hoping someone, anyone, would acknowledge them. But you don't. And that's what kills them. That's what ends them. Not a fight, not a war, just nothing. A void where they thought they could plant themselves, grow, thrive. But there's no soil, no light, no air. Just endless, crushing silence. And for people like that, it's worse than death. And you just walk away. Not because you're weak, not because you're afraid, but because you won. Because you understood something they never did. That real power isn't in what you say or what you do. It's in what you don't. It's in the moments you choose to stay still. The moments you refuse to engage. The moments you watch them fall without lifting a single damn finger. Because in the end, they were always going to destroy themselves. You just gave them the space to do it. You gave them the silence, the emptiness, the nothingness that turned their own weakness against them. And now they're drowning in it, sinking into the void they tried so hard to pull you into. And there's no one there to save them. And that's the final lesson, isn't it? The final bitter truth that the more you ignore, the more they reveal their weaknesses. Every time, without fail. And by the time they realize it, it's already too late. They've already lost. They just don't know it yet. But you do. And that's all that matters. And that's the part that will haunt them. Not the silence itself, not the absence of your reaction, but the realization that you knew, that you saw their weakness long before they ever saw it in themselves, that every word they spat, every insult they hurled, every pathetic attempt to shake you, none of it touched you, not because you didn't hear them, but because you didn't care. And that's worse than any revenge, worse than any counterattack, worse than any punishment they ever could have imagined. Because people like that, they don't fear pain, they don't fear conflict, they live for it, they need it. No, what they fear, what destroys them, is being nothing to you. And once that seed is planted in their mind, once they start to understand just how powerless they truly are, it eats away at them, slowly, painfully, like a disease they can't cure. Because that's the thing about people who rely on hurting others to feel important. Without that, they have nothing, no purpose, no identity, just emptiness. And when you give them silence, when you let them drown in their own irrelevance, they start to see it. They start to feel it. And that's when the real breakdown begins. Because now, every moment of their life becomes a question they can't answer. Why isn't he reacting? Why doesn't he care? Why can't I get under his skin? And it drives them insane. Because to acknowledge your indifference is to acknowledge their own worthlessness. And they can't do that. They won't do that. So they spiral. They push harder. They lash out, hoping desperate that something will break you. But it won't. Because by the time they realize what's happening, you're already gone. You've already moved past them, left them behind, forgotten them like a bad dream. And that's what makes it so much worse. Because now they're trapped. Trapped in the ruins of a war they started, a battle they lost, before they even knew they were fighting it. And they know it. They feel it. That suffocating, crushing realization that nothing they did mattered. That no matter how hard they tried, no matter how deep they cut, they never even touched you. And oh, the regret, the slow, creeping weight of it. Because someday, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday, they're going to look back. They're going to see every move they made, every word they spoke, every pathetic little scheme they built to tear you down. And they're going to realize the truth, that they weren't your enemy. They weren't your rival. They weren't even a challenge. They were just noise. And now they're just another forgotten face in a sea of failures. Another name you don't even remember. And that's what kills them. Not the silence, not the loss, but the truth that comes with it. The truth that they were never as strong as they thought they were. That they never had control. That all their efforts, all their tricks, all their desperate little games amounted to nothing. And you just keep walking, unbothered, unshaken, because you've already won. Because the more you ignore, the more they reveal their weaknesses, every single time. And by the time they figure that out, by the time they understand what really happened, you'll be so far ahead, so far above them, that they won't even be a memory. They'll just be another lesson, another example, another reminder of a simple, undeniable truth. Weak people destroy themselves. You just have to let them. And now, as they sit in the ruins of their own making, staring into the abyss they dug with their own hands, they will try, oh, they will try, to convince themselves it wasn't their fault. They will tell themselves whatever lies they need to, just to keep from breaking completely. He changed. He became distant. He was never real to begin with. They will spin stories in their heads, rewrite history, do anything to shift the blame. Because admitting the truth, that's unbearable. Admitting that they were the weak ones, that they pushed too hard, that they gambled and lost, that would mean facing the weight of their own failure. And weak people, They don't do that. They can't do that. So they will keep searching for answers in places where none exist. They will replay conversations, analyze moments, dig through the wreckage of their own destruction, hoping to find something, anything, that makes them feel like they were still in control. But the more they dig, the more they realize there's nothing there. Just emptiness, just silence, the same silence that shattered them, the same silence that stripped them bare. Because that's the thing about power. It isn't about being the loudest in the room. It isn't about proving yourself to people who don't matter. It's about knowing when to disappear. And you mastered that. You left before they even realized they lost you. You didn't argue. You didn't fight. You didn't need to. You let them crumble under the weight of their own weakness. And now they're left sifting through the ashes, trying to find pieces of a war that was already over before it began. And in the quiet moments, when they're alone, when the noise of the world fades away, that's when the real punishment begins. Because regret doesn't hit all at once. It doesn't announce itself with a crash. No, it creeps in slow, like water seeping through cracks in a foundation. One day, they'll hear a song that reminds them of you. A word, a place, a smell, something small, insignificant to anyone else, but to them, it will be a knife, a reminder of what they threw away, a reminder of the strength they tried to break. And in that moment, in that breath of silence, where there's no one left to distract them from themselves, they will finally feel it. The hollowness, the nothingness, the brutal, unforgiving truth that they lost you forever. And you won't notice. You won't even remember, because you'll be somewhere else, somewhere better, somewhere above all of it. You'll be building, thriving, living, while they're trapped in a prison of their own regret, because people think revenge is about getting even, about striking back, about proving a point. But the truth is much simpler. Revenge isn't about hurting them. It's about showing them that they were never powerful enough to hurt you in the first place. And when they finally understand that, that's when they break. And by the time they finally accept it, by the time they finally see it, you will be too far gone for them to ever reach again, because you won. Because the more you ignored, the more they revealed their weaknesses. And now they have to live with them, alone.